Hello. Okay. All right.
The views you're looking at right now of the moon are being gathered with the SAW cameras, or solar array wing camera. The solar array wings are those X-shaped wings that stick out of the bottom of the Orion vehicle, and they are used to collect solar power and distribute to the vehicle. But on the very edge of these wings, are cameras. As you rotate the solar array wings, you are able to capture different views of not only the vehicle itself, but also of both the moon and, earlier on in the mission, the Earth.
Hi guys, I'm back. It looks like NASA's live streaming. Great. So let's see how far the Orion spacecraft is still away from the moon. From lunar, what is it? The second lunar flyby we're going to look at. It's still 5,374 miles away, but it's traveling at 3,896 miles per hour, so we should get there pretty fast, I think. So I just returned to pick up my my youngest daughter from primary school it's called, I think. So she's 10 years old, and today they celebrated Sinterklaas. In the Netherlands. So she got some nice presents. Oh, let's see what they have to say.
Of today's outbound powered flyby burn. This burn will bring Orion in a trajectory to head back home for a splashdown on Sunday,
I need some
December 11th.
headphones.
We are anticipating that burn to begin at 10:43 a.m. Central Time. But while we look ahead to the return-powered flyby, let's take a look back at some of the highlights from this historic mission so far. First up, we have the Space Launch System launching from Pad 39B at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida with its sights set on the moon. SLS blasted off at 12:47 a.m. Central on November 16th. Here you see the 4 RS-25 engines lighting up the Florida sky.
Mission control.
And this video shows SLS and Orion's climb to orbit from the perspective of a camera on the rocket. It was about
so I hope you can also hear the live feed. Oh.
And following liftoff and that climb to orbit, the translunar injection burn took place for Artemis 1. The TLI maneuver took place as the upper part of the rocket, officially named the Interim Cryogenic Propulsion Stage, fired one RL-10 engine, producing 24,750 pounds of thrust to accelerate the vehicle to more than 22,600 miles per hour, a velocity fast enough to overcome the pull of Earth's gravity and propel Orion out of low Earth orbit to send the spacecraft to the moon. The TLI maneuver precisely targeted a point above the moon that will guide Orion close enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. And right after that TLI burn, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage separated from Orion, which you did just see a video of that on your screen there.
Hey, the Earth.
Later that day, we received our very first imagery of Earth, as well as completed the first checkout of the orbital maneuver engine, or OMS engine, which...
Yeah, guys, this is what they captured before. So this is like a summary of the entire Artemis 1 mission. So let's listen what they have to say.
Now, several days later, on November 21st, Orion performed the outbound powered flyby burn with the orbital maneuvering engine as well. This video shows Orion as it approaches the moon for this burn.
I saw that one live actually. It was pretty awesome.
And following that burn, Orion completed its closest approach to the lunar surface, where it was just about 80 miles above the lunar surface. And then Orion completed the distant retrograde orbit, which enabled Orion to head out into deep space.
Yep. And now we're going for the second lunar flyby.
This photo that you're looking at on your screen was taken while Orion was in that distant orbit.
Mars! No, just kidding.
And this was the furthest point that Orion reached during its mission. Orion was 268,563 miles from our home planet when this photo was taken on November 28th. Orion has now traveled further than any spacecraft built for humans meant to return back to planet Earth.
There they go again. Built for humans.
And in this photo, Orion's solar rays split the difference between the Earth and the Moon on flight day 14. This image was captured by a camera on the tip of one of the spacecraft's 4 solar arrays.
That's a nice picture. The moon actually bigger in that picture than the Earth.
And just last week, the distant retrograde departure burn occurred, which placed Orion in a trajectory to exit distant retrograde orbit and head back toward the moon ahead of RPF today, which we are awaiting and looking forward to. And here's some video just prior to that burn.
All right.
And you can see Earth there in the almost center of your screen, right behind the solar array.
Can we? Ah, yeah, there it is. It's super tiny. So this is during that distant retrograde orbit.
So as you can see, Orion has had an exciting journey so far, but still a few days left in this mission. At this time, Orion is 5,191 miles away from the lunar surface. And we're under 2 hours and 30 minutes away from today's return power flyby burn. Again, this burn is slated to begin at 10:43 a.m. Central and will be a 3-minute, 27-second burn.
Okay. A 3-minute burn. So, guys, if you're just tuning in, we are going to, or I am going to watch the second lunar flyby, as you can see, of the Orion spacecraft around the moon. And yeah, they're live streaming it, so you're welcome to join me and check out the views. And we already saw some interesting, like an interesting summary, I think, of this mission. And maybe for those of you who are unaware, this is the Orion Artemis spacecraft, the Orion 1 mission. It's basically about a 3-week mission to fly the Orion spacecraft to the moon. So this was actually the orbit. The red line represents the Orion spacecraft, and the white dot here and the white circle represents the moon in orbit around the blue dot, which is the Earth. So we are now approaching the second lunar flyby, as you just saw here. So let's see it again. So the Orion spacecraft lifted off, and then it did a first lunar flyby, a moon flyby, and then it reached its farthest points away from the moon. And now we are here, exactly here, where we will see the second lunar flyby live. So I thought it would be fun to watch that second lunar flyby with together with you guys. And this is actually the live feed or NASA is giving us. with the moon in the background and the Orion spacecraft approaching the moon. The moon looks like a little bit of an egg-shaped moon, but I think this is due to the wide field camera. I think they have, I don't know, kind of maybe an 8mm or a 9mm lens on the Orion spacecraft, a wide field view, and that also causes the moon to look a little bit egg-shaped. But I can assure you, just look outside tonight and you will see that the moon is actually has a round shape. Anyway, Paris is here. Hi, Paris. Are you going to watch the live stream with me? Cool, thanks. And yeah, for those of you who are not aware, I'm just an astrophotographer taking some backyard astrophotography pictures from home. And so my channel is all about that, taking pictures of the moon, taking pictures of planets, and imaging deep sky objects inside and outside our solar system. You will be amazed what is actually possible with a telescope and a camera. Oh, what is this? Spam. Hide this user. So guys, thanks again for watching, and I see 16 people, so very nice. I have the live stream on here, and yeah, we can also do we can also check the tracker, and we can also do some other stuff. So glad to see you here again. My God. Verwelderen, verwoorden. Interesting. Spambots. So yeah, we see a live view of the moon, and yeah, interestingly, actually, what you can do with a backyard telescope, and can quickly show you this if they are not talking. I don't think so. So if you want to image the moon from your backyard, you can actually take a telescope and a camera, and you can make pictures you see here of, for instance, the Montes Apenninus you see here in the picture, some nice lunar craters. This is the Copernicus crater. You can take these images from your backyard. Copernicus crater about 100 kilometers in diameter. So this is a wider field view. I took, yeah, just take short videos here. This is I think the south pole of the moon with a lot of craters we can see from the Earth. So I can highly recommend you. This is half moon. I can highly recommend you to go into astrophotography. Just
again, you're looking at a
full moon
live
here.
view of the moon as it
Let's
continues to close, as Orion continues to close in. Now, 5,058 miles above the lunar surface. Orion is traveling at a velocity of 3,933 miles per hour and is 234,000 miles from planet Earth.
Yeah, the tracker is not updating. So let's go back to the live view. That's better. Yeah, the moon looks thick. It looks... Yeah, they're only, what is it? 5,000, 3,000 miles away from the moon now.
We actually are able to view several Apollo sites, Apollo landing sites rather. Of course, we are a bit too far away to make out any distinct features, but you are looking at the landing sites for Apollo 15, 17, 11, 16, and
all of
14.
Them. Yeah, it's the entire moon, so we can see all the Apollo lunar landing sites. Okay, it is pretty nice to refer to Apollo, of course, being the first man-made missions, manned missions to the moon. And of course, Artemis is in the Greek, what is it? Greek literature. It's the Greek, how do you call it? Mythology. In Greek mythology, Artemis is the sister of Apollo. So that's why they call these missions Artemis.
And you are looking at a graphic here that shows a little more clearly those landing sites and Orion's path as it flies around it. Again, Orion is about 5,000 miles away from the lunar surface, so we won't be able to make out any details. And at its closest approach, Orion will be 80 miles above the lunar surface, still a little too far to make out any of those details.
Yeah, it's a wide field camera they have on the Orion spacecraft. So even with my 500 and 2000 millimeter focal length telescopes from my backyard, I can see craters that are about 100 kilometers in diameter. So definitely you cannot make out like the flag or the rovers that are, I think, still on the moon, right? So anyway, they should have put maybe a bit of a zoom camera on that Orion spacecraft, but they didn't, I think. So guys, I'm fine. Yes, I just picked up my daughter from primary school, and tonight we will have Sinterklaas, which is a Dutch tradition where we where Sinterklaas, like a kind of Santa Claus, but a little bit different, will bring gifts to the children. More moon stuff. Jadira, yeah, I can't get enough from watching the moon live, especially if a spacecraft is in space. So I cannot do that with, from my backyard, of course. But we are looking at the moon from the Earth's point of view, I think. So because we can make out the same mares, the same mountain ranges as we can make out when just looking up from our backyard.
As we continue to get these great views of the moon, we did mention that NASA Flight Director Rick LaBrode is leading the team here in Mission Control Houston inside the White Flight Control Room during today's burn. But let's take a quick look at this video, which discusses the various flight directors of Artemis in a little bit more detail.
Paris, nice Greek letters.
Monaco AOS, good port.
Copy. Flight controllers generally focus on systems, subsystems of the vehicle, and they're more in tune with the detailed workings of their particular system that they're responsible for. Flight directors, on the other hand, are more in tune with what is the integration between all of the subsystems. What are we all marching towards? What's our mission objective?
Prop flight has the RCS holding together with the regs.
Really, your training starts when you become a flight controller. You know, you learn a lot by osmosis, and you kind of get a sense of a little bit of the job. But once you become a flight director, the amount of learning you do is extra.
So this is a commercial for flight directors. So guys, where are you? Paris, Artemis. Yes, you can write it in Greek. I can read a little bit of Greek. It's a bit tricky, but I can do that. So do you want to listen to what they are saying? Now let's check out that tracker again. So it's still 3,957 miles per hour it goes, and it's 4,866 miles away from the moon. So lunar flyby should take place in about less than an hour. And it's kind of interesting to see that the tracker shows like a detailed image of the moon, or more detailed image of the moon as compared to the live stream. Oh, here they're still showing the flight director stuff.
You really have to be explorers. It pushes the boundaries of civilization.
We are having to develop new technology that's going to have to sustain the astronauts for these very, very long trips. And it just makes sense to test that and go into the moon, where you're in a similar environment, but you're much closer. And in the event of an emergency type scenario, we can bring them safely back home.
Station, this is Houston.
We've had a lot of experience now in low Earth orbit, you know, over 50, 60 years of experience. And we've learned how to do that pretty well. We've learned what the effects of the body are in low Earth orbit, but there's still things that we need to practice, and we need to be able to understand how you sustain life further and further and further away from our planet.
That's cool shot. Hey, that's JAXA. That's
it's just so different. From
that's a
everything you
Japanese
learn
satellite.
When you do low
Okay.
Earth orbit. And that's what's making it so much fun. I'm every bit as excited about this mission as I was the first day I walked in the doors of Mission Control.
Yeah, cool to work there, I guess. So we're back to the live feed.
Orion is now less than 5,000 miles away from the moon, 4,833 miles away to be exact, traveling at a velocity of 3,966 miles per hour.
That's what the tracker says. Oh.
We're 2 hours and 13 minutes away from today's burn. We're still targeting 10:43 a.m. Central for that burn.
10:43. So that's about 13 minutes from now, I guess. Oh, sorry. Hey, sorry. Here it is. So maybe this is best here. So Fuffy, are you from Germany? Hallo, guten Tag. So we're still 3,000 miles away from the moon. Yet they showed the Apollo landing sites, and I think that's of course a great tribute to what happened in the 70s already. The first Apollo mission landing on the moon in 1969, and here we are about 50 years later. And finally, we are going to attempt to put humans back on the moon with the Artemis program. So I think that's pretty special. That's worth watching. And yeah, of course, as an astrophotographer and moon and planetary imager, I'm always interested in pictures of space. So if I can see a live picture of a lunar flyby with the Orion spacecraft, I'm definitely going to look at it. And I thought it would be fun to watch it with you. So hey, let's see, Carlos is from Den Haag. Hello, Carlos. So guys, these live images, they are wide field images of the moon. And yeah, once again, you can take beautiful images from your backyard. If you have a longer focal length telescope or a zoom lens, you'll definitely be able to get some nice looking images.
Everything continuing to proceed smoothly this morning as we anticipate the return powered flyby burn in about 2 hours and 11 minutes.
Okay.
This burn will last for 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will change the velocity of the spacecraft by 960 feet per second. And this burn will also place Orion in a trajectory to head back home ahead of a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th.
Oh, wow. Sorry, just kidding.
The next major milestone here in Mission Control Houston is when Flight Director Judd Freeling will poll the team of flight controllers for a go, no-go for the burn.
All right, let's go. Let's hope for the best. I heard they got some power issues a few days back.
From now.
About an hour from now. So, okay, so we still are 1 hour away from the close lunar flyby. If we look at the tracker, so still 4,768 miles to go. We are traveling at, or the Orion spacecraft is traveling at about 4,000 miles per hour. So that is indeed 1 extra hour until we are. I think it's about 100 kilometers from the surface of the moon, more or less. So I was hoping for some detailed surface images of the moon. Last time they didn't show that. Because there's also when the Orion spacecraft goes behind the moon, then of course we will have a loss of signal. But let's hope we will get some detailed images of the surface of the moon. They are approaching the moon from our side, from the Earth's side, as you can see. So here once again, this is the, I can show it to you here. So this is the orbit where we are now here, the red dot representing the Orion spacecraft, and the white circle and the white grayish dot representing the moon orbiting the Earth, and the blue dot in the middle is of course the Earth. So we had takeoff, we had the first lunar flyby, as you can see here. Then we had this, the most distant point from Earth the Orion spacecraft was at. And then today we have this second lunar flyby, and it will then, the Orion spacecraft will fall back to Earth's gravity. And I think that the splashdown will be, if I read it correctly, on Sunday. So if you're interested in watching the Orion spacecraft land on Earth, it will be on Sunday, next Sunday. Oh, Fuffy is, you bought your deep sky astrophotography gear and the weather is bad. Yeah, if you're in Germany, you're probably suffering the same weather as I do in the Netherlands. And I always take into account that December and January are two of the worst months to do astrophotography. We do have these long nights, these long dark nights in the Northern Hemisphere, but in Western Europe, I don't know where you are in Germany, but in Western Europe we have a lot of clouds. Maybe we have 1 or 2 days of clear skies to take some pictures of objects in space. And actually I try to get the most out of November, actually. So if you look at my channel, I have a lot of live streams done in November.
We're just about an hour away from today's anticipated loss of signal. That LOS is slated to begin at 10:41 a.m. Central.
Oh. Is that now
We will
already?
not have signal with the Orion spacecraft during this time frame because the moon will be blocking any signal to the Deep Space Network.
Okay.
It's at this point that Orion will complete its closest approach to the lunar surface. That closest approach slated to be at 10:43 a.m. and just seconds later at 10:43 and 23 seconds a.m. Central will be today's return-powered flyby burn, which commits Orion to a journey back home.
Yep, okay. So let's see what's going to happen. So what I was saying, in November I still try to make the most out of my astrophotography hobby. So I have a couple of live streams on live views of the sun, live views of the moon and the planets. So if you want to check that out, you're welcome to. And I'm trying to do these regular live streams. But yeah, right now it's super cloudy. So the only thing I can do is, for instance, rejoice around the Orion spacecraft flying close to the moon. And maybe I can also do some live streams on the astrophotography hobby itself. I'm thinking about that as well. So Dave is also here. Dave, are you still in Cyprus?
Orion is now 4,571 miles away from the moon, traveling at a velocity of 3,996 miles per hour.
Is that true? Ah, it's not updating. 4,000 miles per hour. That's pretty cool. Not as fast as light though. Photon of light travels at 300,000 kilometers per second. But I think 4,000 miles per hour is already, for us humans, pretty fast. Would be fantastic to be in the Orion spacecraft right now. And I think the Artemis, because this is the unmanned mission, and there will of course be an Artemis 2 mission. But it's still, I think, at least a year away from now. So I read that the Artemis 2 mission will be a manned mission with a lunar flyby. But we'll have to wait for another 1.5 years or something like that. So we have to enjoy this this view while we can. Oh, the tracker is cancelling out again. Don't show this annoying box again. Okay, thank you. Let's go back to that live feed. So yeah, I think this is the image they have of the moon. It's not really
Everything continuing to look good this morning ahead of the return-powered
but I think it's not possible.
That burn will take place 2 hours and 4 minutes from now and will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds long. The burn will take place with the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, located on the bottom of the service module of the Orion spacecraft. This engine is capable of having burns that last less than 1 minute to more than 16 minutes in length.
Sorry about that. That's my full moon picture. Can try to re-edit it.
The OMS engine is the main engine on the European service module and provides the primary propulsion for Orion's major in-space maneuvers. The engine produces 6,000 pounds of thrust and is equipped to steer the spacecraft, and it can also be used in some abort cases to safely return Orion to Earth should that be required.
I'm trying to find out.
The OMS engine is actually a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown in space before on 19 Space Shuttle flights, beginning with STS-41G in October 1984 and ending with STS-112 in October 2002.
Is that true? Yeah.
There are also 8 auxiliary engines on Orion. These are also located on the bottom of the service module and can provide trajectory correction.
Hide this user.
And there are 24 smaller engines grouped into 6 pods, which can provide attitude control as well. So in total, the service module has 33 engines. But today, for the return power flyby burn, we'll only be using one of those, again, the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine.
So, I just found out the image of the moon is upside down. I think this is what we are looking at. So this is an image I took with my telescope. And yeah, as you can see, we have the Maris here, which usually if you go outside and you look up, you have them on top. But now they are towards the bottom. And this is, I think, Tycho crater. You see this huge crater here on top. Normally it's on the bottom. This big impact crater. I think it's about 100 kilometers in diameter. I can check it out for you. It's one of the largest craters on the moon. But yeah, the picture is wide field and it's not completely focused on the moon. It's focused on the spacecraft. So that's why, because it is the spacecraft is sharp, but the moon is still a few thousand miles away. You don't see the sharp images of the moon, you see a blurry image of the moon. But hopefully this will improve once the spacecraft will get closer to the moon. Wido keeps mooning us. Yeah, I know. This is the final. They have 2 flybys. Who is this? Little legacy searches. So we have to take the most out of it, right? We have to watch this.
Everything continuing to look good here.
It took 50 years to get back to the moon with a human-rated spacecraft.
Return power flyby burn. Before and during the Artemis 1 mission, we asked the public to share your moon-inspired creations with the hashtag NASA MoonSnap. We have received thousands of submissions, but here are just a few of them.
Why didn't I participate? Ugh. Hey, this is nice.
This is a mural painted by Nikki Adams. You can clearly see the Space Launch System rocket, as well as the Greek goddess Artemis, after which the Artemis missions are named. Artemis is the goddess of the moon and the hunt, and I think you can see her arrows and a deer included in the mural as well.
Cool.
Next up, we have a photo submitted by Jessa Rodriguez. The title is Ben and Sophia Plot Their Course. You can see the inclusion of Snoopy in his flight suit as well. Snoopy is our zero gravity indicator aboard the Orion spacecraft.
I didn't know that.
And the Snoopy inside Orion right now is dressed very similarly to the Snoopy in this photo.
Ooh. I like Snoopy.
What we see here is a 3D printed art piece from Terramoto. The artist entitled this piece Lunar Specimen 001 and used real data from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter to create this. LRO data is also being used to determine where astronauts will land on the moon during the Artemis 3 mission. And the last image we have to show you today is from STEM educator Susie Bennett. She taught her 130 students about the Artemis 1 mission and even got them to fill out boarding passes. There are currently 3.4 million names of the public flying aboard the Orion spacecraft safely stowed on a flash drive. Thank you to everyone who shared your moon-inspired creations with us. If you're interested in participating, just use the hashtag #NASAMoonSnap.
Ooh. Yeah, we're a bit too late for that. The mission is almost over. Very nice to see Snoopy there in an astronaut suit. So yeah, and once again, so it's now a Monday, right? Monday the 5th, December 5. So this is the lunar flyby, and then it will only take a couple of days for the Orion spacecraft to get back to Earth. So I think I'm correct in saying that the splashdown will be on Sunday. For me, it will be Sunday morning, I think. So maybe Sunday night. Yeah, they can play around a little bit with the exact timing of the landing. So we have to see. But if you want to see the splashdown of the Orion spacecraft, just put it on Sunday morning and or Sunday night if you're in the US, and check out the updates from NASA. So they finally got rid of that thick moon. Varus, are you still complaining about the moon? This is the view they're getting live, Varus. I have an edited version of the moon here. I just wanted to check out how the moon was positioned actually, because I saw some familiar features, but I couldn't really make out how the moon was positioned. So I took a full moon image from my data, actually, a picture I took myself, to really compare the two. So now you can clearly see that we have an upside down moon view, or at least upside down in terms of there's no upside down in space, but when we are looking at the moon from the northern hemisphere, we see Tycho crater normally at the bottom, but now it's on top. So always nice to check that out. So yeah, return powered flyby burn expected 11:43 EST. Yeah, well, that's Eastern Standard Time. I'm actually not quite sure. So that would be maybe then, because it's for me it's 47. So that's 45 minutes from now.
Orion
probably
is 4,227 miles away from the moon, traveling at a velocity of over 4,000 miles per hour. This imagery is coming from a camera on the Solar Array Wing, or SAW.
The Solar Array Wing.
We expect to continue to get imagery up until the point that Orion does go behind the moon and is in that loss of signal period that we've discussed. That will be a 30-minute loss of signal period beginning at 10:41 a.m. Central Time this morning. And just 2 minutes after the LOS begins, or that loss of signal period, we will have the return-powered flyby burn occur at 10:43 a.m. Central, lasting 3 minutes and 27 seconds, utilizing the Orbital Maneuvering System engine.
Okay. So I guess we still have some ways to go then. Here we have the tracker. 4,193 miles, traveling at 4,050 miles per hour. So that's about 1 hour to go, or about 45 minutes probably. And we have this one image they are showing us of the moon and the spacecraft approaching the moon. That's pretty awesome to see. Here it is. So we don't see the Earth in the background. Unfortunately, we did see the Earth. We did see an Earth. Yeah, how do you call it? The Earth set, I guess, on the first lunar flyby, when Orion was approaching the moon from the far side. So we actually saw the moon and the Earth in the background. That was a pretty amazing view. But now they're approaching the moon from the side we are looking at, so from the near side. So I guess the Earth is actually behind the spacecraft right now. Dave is halfway between Qatar and Iran.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a telemetry-driven
Did you have a good imaging session in Cyprus, Dave?
Travels at 4,000 miles per hour, closing in on the moon, now 4,131 miles away. Orion is 234,940 miles away from home. Orion launched on November 16th and is in the 20th day of its 25.5-day historic test flight mission. Orion is an uncrewed test flight, but is performing critical checkouts of its systems ahead of a crewed test flight as part of Artemis 2. Throughout this mission, Orion has completed several milestones, including flying behind the moon once already as part of the outbound powered flyby. During that, a burn took place, which put Orion in a trajectory to head out to deep space.
Yep, that's this orbit.
The distant retrograde orbit burn also occurred, which further propelled Orion into that trajectory. And Orion remained in deep space for about 6 days and broke the distance record during that time frame for the farthest distance from Earth traveled by a human-rated spacecraft meant to return home. Orion, at its furthest point from Earth, was 268,563 miles away.
Okay.
Following that, Orion hung out in deep space for a little longer, and just a few days ago we had the DRD burn, or distant retrograde departure burn. This burn put Orion on a trajectory to head back towards the moon ahead of today's return-powered flyby burn. Today's burn is critical to ensure that Orion is on the proper trajectory to return back to Earth safely.
Yep. Yeah, if that goes wrong, then we have lost the Orion spacecraft forever, I think. This burn has to get to be exactly timed right, because if not, the Orion spacecraft will just fly by the moon. So now I'm kind of curious. I think we are looking at the aft side, right? I think the Orion spacecraft has turned away from the moon actually, and do a burn to actually decrease speed to be captured in moon's gravity, and then it will get an assist of that moon to go back to our good Earth, I think. So yeah, guys, this is, I think they're just waiting for that lunar flyby to occur. It's still 4,000, but I have to update the tracker all the time. So 3,988 miles away. I think we still have about 40 minutes to go until that close lunar flyby. So the images of the moon, they should improve, hopefully. So let's go back to that live view here. And yeah, just as a reminder, I'm just an astrophotographer, and I like looking into space with my backyard telescope. I don't have the money to buy a spacecraft and go into space. So yeah, I really like imaging the night sky, objects inside our own solar system, but also in our own Milky Way outside of our solar system, and even other galaxies. You can do all that with a backyard telescope. So if you're interested in that, check out my channel, and you're welcome to join me on this live feed. I'm just curious on what kind of imagery the Orion spacecraft will be able to take. So I'm hoping they will be receiving a signal also when the Orion spacecraft is close to the surface of the moon, but I'm not sure. During the first flyby, the moon was a bit... I think the Orion spacecraft had a loss of signal, so we didn't actually see a close-up image of the moon. I think also because they were flying on the dark side, so then it's obviously not possible to get a good image. But let's see. I'm hoping that once the Orion spacecraft gets closer, we will see a more nice imagery, nice live video of the moon. So Paris, are you having fun? Oh, Dave says the weather was pretty bad. Didn't get a lot done. A couple of solar images. Dave, I'm sorry to hear that. Hopefully next time you will have a better time. So I know that Greece can have some pretty amazing dark skies. I've been there a couple of years ago, and just with a DSLR camera, and to a dark place, border class 3 skies, and you could clearly see the Milky Way during summertime. And it was pretty amazing to see how many stars you could detect with the naked eye, actually. Anyway, this is the moon we're getting. Now, once again, if you want to image the moon, here are some of my personal pictures. And I think anyone can do this. And one of my favorite spots is actually this one, the Copernicus crater. Really like that crater. It's about 100 kilometers in diameter, and you can see it when you have half moon and full moon also. So yeah. We're just waiting. Let's look at the tracker again. (3,884 miles to go, it says. So guys, if you are into space, definitely you should also try to check out Mars in the night sky. So we just had the closest, not opposition, we had the closest distance between Mars and Earth on December 1st, 2022. So maybe I can get rid of those headphones. They're not speaking anyway. Oh, do you have a loss of signal?
We are now 1 hour and 42 minutes and counting away from today's
anticipated
1 hour? Loss of signal as Orion
I thought they were almost there.
Behind the moon and performs the return-powered flyby burn, which will set us on a trajectory to return back to Earth and splash down in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th. But now as you can imagine, this moment can certainly be a bit suspenseful as we await Orion to emerge from the backside of the moon and regain communications with the Deep Space Network. So let's hear from one of the INCO flight controllers about how much that is the case in this next clip.
During each mission to the moon, we'll have a period of time where the spacecraft goes behind the moon and we lose line of sight with the spacecraft from the DSN stations. That can be quite a nail-biting time. Usually we're executing an important maneuver or a burn during that time, and we have a predicted time when we should reacquire the signal, and so everybody is usually staring at that clock. As soon as the signal comes in-house, there's a sigh of relief, and we check to make sure that the burn executed correctly and that the spacecraft is in good health.
So again, we are anticipating that loss of signal to begin an hour
It's a little
and
bit more
41
complicated than
minutes
that.
from
He dumbed it down
Today's
for
loss
us.
of signal will last 30 minutes in length, during which time Orion will complete its closest approach to the moon and just seconds later perform the return-powered flyby burn, which will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will change the velocity of the Orion spacecraft by 960 feet per second.
All right. So yeah, I guess we have 1 hour to go then. 1.5 hours still. I'm not sure I'm going to make it until then. I think I have 1 hour before I need to do some other stuff. But anyway, I wanted to say something about Mars. Mars is very near to Earth right now. So we had the closest approach of Mars to Earth on December 1st, 2022. So that's about 1 week ago, so 5 days ago. Unfortunately, we had only clouds in the Netherlands, so I couldn't look at Mars whatsoever. But I was able to image Mars the week before, and actually I spent a lot of time tracking Mars for 3.5 hours in the night sky. And I want to show you my Mars rotation. So Mars
Orion
has
is now less than 4,000 miles away from the lunar surface, 3,780 miles to be exact.
They're counting
And
down
Orion
numbers.
is traveling at 4,115 miles per hour.
Okay.
Everything's still continuing to look good here in Mission Control Houston as we anticipate the return power flyby burn occurring at 10:43 a.m. Central, an hour and 41 minutes from now.
An hour and 41 minutes from now. Okay. So anyway, Mars is still pretty close to Earth. So it's 80 million miles or 80 million kilometers away. Or 85, I think right now. So it's still a good time to go outside and watch the red planet in the night sky. And I did like a 3.5 hour tracking of Mars with my telescope. And Mars is only half the size of Earth. So I wasn't able to really enlarge the picture. But anyway, if we have to wait anyhow, so I might as well show you the Mars rotation. So it's a 5-second time lapse of a 3.5 hour rotation of Mars.
Close enough to the lunar surface to leverage the moon's gravitational force and
they're
swing
talking
the
about the same
spacecraft
thing. Okay. So let me show you the Mars rotation I came up with. Hope you like it. Or maybe we can put it in the background. So this took me a lot of. Maybe I should enlarge it, right? Oh. Maybe we can do it like this.
In its orbit. This orbit is 30,000 miles further than the previous record set during Apollo 13, and again is the furthest in space any spacecraft built for humans has ever flown. The orbit is also called retrograde because Orion traveled around the moon opposite the direction the moon travels around Earth. Distant retrograde orbit provides a highly stable orbit where little fuel is required to stay for an extended trip in deep space in order to put Orion's systems to the test in an environment far from Earth.
All right.
The orbit that Orion completed in this mission is different from the orbit done during the Apollo program, in which the spacecraft orbited much closer to the lunar surface in a more circular fashion. It's important for us to learn about how a spacecraft functions in a deep space environment, because as part of the Artemis program, the Gateway program is building a small human-tended space station orbiting the moon that will provide extensive capabilities to support NASA's Artemis campaign. Gateway will be built with international and commercial partnerships and will support sustained exploration and research in deep space, and will include docking ports for a variety of visiting spacecraft, as well as space for crew to live and work, and onboard science investigations to study heliophysics, human health, and life sciences, among other areas. Gateway will be humanity's first space station in lunar orbit to support NASA's deep space exploration plans.
It's basically a space station they want to build that flies between the Earth and the Moon. All right, so yeah, Mars is still...
But before we get to that point, we are testing out...
Okay, guys, I'm going to kill her output. Let's see.
5.5.
So yeah, we still have a bit of waiting to do then. It's like a 1 hour wait until the Orion spacecraft will be closest to the surface of the moon. I hope we will get some good pictures. Or at least a nice live feed. But they're also talking about a blackout. So let's see what's happening. I think of what will happen. I think we will get a better resolution image or better resolution video once the Orion spacecraft reaches the surface, or almost reaches the surface. It's about 100 kilometers, I think, away from the surface. So yeah, and about Mars. Yeah, Mars is of course we can look a little bit at solar system maybe. So of course Mars is in about a 2-year orbit around the Sun, and we are more or less in a 1-year orbit, or exactly 365.25 days orbit. So let's see if I can show you this. Let's hide that. All right. So let's see if I can bring this screen up. Where is it? It's this one. And I can put it here. So if you're interested here, so this is actually the exact position of the planets and our moon in the solar system. So if we're looking at Mars right now, maybe from the top here, you can see that the Earth is about closest to Mars as it will be in once every 2 years. So yeah, if you want to look at Mars, this is the perfect month, I would say, to do that actually, because Mars is super close to Earth, so it's very bright in the night sky. You can see an orange star basically if you look towards the east when you're in the northern hemisphere. I think also when you're in the southern hemisphere, a bright orange star. If you have a telescope with a focal length of about 2000 millimeters, then you will be able to look at Mars. And I think you also need an aperture of about 8 inch or 200 millimeters at least, but you will be able to look at Mars and make a nice Mars rotation video like I did here. Makes me want to play Kerbal again. Yes, Sandro. Paris, what are you doing? Wido, are you and your friends with Astro Backyard? I don't know Trevor from Astro Backyard personally, but he's a very nice figure, of course. If you're into astrophotography, you will find his channel very useful. Yeah. So this is maybe nice to see. So we can also see the position of the moon right now. So we are on Earth here. And can I actually zoom in? Oh, what am I doing? Okay, this is basically from Earth point of view. That's not what I was looking for. Maybe here. So we are looking at the moon like this, right? I think upside down, but anyway, I cannot do that, I think. So because we are now facing, the Orion spacecraft is facing the moon from the near side, so that also means that the Earth is behind the spacecraft, and Orion will then go past the moon here and then drop back to Earth, where it will land in about, I think, 6 days from now. So Sunday. And splashdown will be in the Pacific. So let's go back to that live view. Let's see if they have any updates. They can also look at the tracker. So still, it's now 3,421 kilometers of miles away from the moon. And yeah, it is facing Tycho crater. That crater is about, what is it? I think 100 kilometers across, I can check. But that's a super nice impact crater on the moon. So let's see. Oh, sorry,
set on the moon.
We are.
SLS blasted off at 12:47 a.m. Central on November 16th. And here you see those 4 RS-25 engines lighting up the Florida sky. You can also see the orange core stage as well as one of the 2 solid rocket boosters in this view. On the very top of the vehicle is the launch abort system and, of course, the Orion spacecraft, which is now closing in on the moon ahead of today's return powered flyby burn. Now, in this video, you have a launch from the perspective of a camera located on the Space Launch System rocket. This video shows SLS and Orion's climb to orbit. It was about an 8.5-minute climb to orbit. You can see the rocket soaring over the launch pad.
That's a pretty cool view.
Following liftoff and the climb to orbit, the translunar injection burn took place. The translunar injection maneuver took place as the upper part of the rocket, officially named the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, fired one RL-10 engine, producing 24,750 pounds of thrust to accelerate the vehicle to more than 22,600 miles per hour, which is a velocity fast enough to overcome the pull of Earth's gravity and propel Orion out of low Earth orbit to send the spacecraft to the moon. The translunar injection maneuver precisely targeted a point on the moon that helped guide Orion close enough to be captured by the moon's gravity. And right after the TLI burn, the interim cryogenic propulsion stage separated from the Orion spacecraft, which you did see in this video here. You see it floating away in the distance. Later that day, we received our first imagery of Earth, as well.
So this was the first lunar flyby where they approached the moon from the far side with the Earth in the background.
Smoothly. Orion was officially on the way to the moon. And then several days later, on November 21st, Orion performed the outbound powered flyby, also with the orbital maneuvering engine, rather. The outbound powered flyby is the sister to the return powered flyby, which will occur today. The outbound powered flyby, as the name suggests, takes place on the outbound portion of the trip, whereas the return powered flyby takes place on the return journey, as Orion is anticipating its return home. In this video here, you can see the Orion spacecraft, as well as the Earth in the distance and the moon off to the left.
Yeah, that's a super nice
This was just
image.
before Orion flew behind the moon as part of that outbound powered flyby.
This is a picture,
After this,
I think.
Orion was placed in a deep space trajectory where it completed a distant retrograde orbit. During that time frame, Orion traveled the furthest distance than any human-rated spacecraft meant to return back to Earth had ever traveled. And in this photo here, you see Orion take a photo of planet Earth from over 268,000 miles away.
8 billion people there. Just below the solar panel.
And in this photo here, you can see Orion's solar rays split the difference between Earth and the moon on flight day 14 of the Artemis 1 mission. This imagery was captured by one of the cameras on the tip of one of the solar arrays.
That's the one image I can take as an astrophotographer. Pictures of Earth from space. It's incredible.
And just last week, on December 1st, the distant retrograde departure burn occurred, which placed Orion in a trajectory to exit the distant retrograde orbit and head back toward the moon ahead of the return-powered flyby, which we're looking forward today. In this view here, you can see the solar array flexing, as well as an Earth in the distance there, almost in the center of your screen. So it's been a busy journey for the Orion spacecraft. Again, we're on flight day 20 of a 25.5-day test flight mission. Orion is now 3,238 miles away from the lunar surface. And we are just 1 hour and 26 minutes away from today's outbound powered flyby burn, which will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and place Orion in a trajectory to head back home.
Yeah, that's still a bit. I was expecting that that burn to happen at for me like about an hour ago. But it's still some ways to go then. Let me check the tracker again. So still 3,202 miles away from the lunar surface. The speed is increasing, the velocity, 4,217, as the Orion spacecraft is caught in the moon's gravity. So it's unfortunate that they cannot refocus, apparently, I think. So you can see it here. The moon gets larger in the field of view, but they have some issues in like focusing the image. I think it's focused on the spacecraft. It's almost like it's an autofocus thing. So they forgot to put it in manual focus mode when on takeoff. I don't know, but the Orion spacecraft is clear and the moon is a bit vague,
the next major milestone that we are tracking this morning here from Mission Control Houston will take place in about an hour from now, when NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling will poll the team inside Mission Control for a go, no-go for today's burn.
Yes, Sandro, the moon was upside down, but not anymore, I think. They repositioned the camera. So if you now compare the moon, this is a full moon image I took a while back. So if I reposition it, let's see, can I? Oh, here it is. You see now, no, it's still this. It's still upside down from our perspective, from the Earth, Northern Hemisphere Earth perspective. Anyway, oh no, or maybe this is Tycho then. Wait. Is it like this now? Oh. I want to rotate that image. I'm not doing it correctly. Why is it showing me this large? Oh, here it is. Is this the image we're getting? I think so. You see? Sorry about the wobbling. Where can I find this? So I guess now it's a bit on the side.
We're continuing to bring you live imagery of the lunar surface from the Orion spacecraft as it continues to close in. Orion is currently 3,091 miles away from the moon, traveling at a velocity of 4,238 miles per hour.
It's a little bit like this. Yeah, still on our way to the moon, yes. And unfortunately they have an unsharp image of the moon. I was hoping for high resolution details. Vic from Belgium. You're home from school, Vic. So we are looking at a live video of the moon, taken from one of the solar panels on the side of one of the solar panels of the Orion spacecraft. They put a camera there, and this will be the second lunar flyby. I thought it would happen right now, but still some way to go. About 3,017 miles distance. Oh, I'm struggling with the feed. So they have to reposition the camera all the time because the Orion spacecraft keeps getting closer to the moon. Sandro, you think so too? Yeah, it was upside down, but they repositioned the camera, Sandro. So I think it's now more... the view is more in line with what we are used to seeing from Earth. Tips for gaming is also back. I have about half an hour to go, so I'm hoping we will get close to the moon, and I'm hoping for some nice images of the Orion spacecraft. And of course, I'm watching because I think the next mission will be a manned mission, the Artemis 2 mission. But that's still years away. I think it's at least 1 year away, I read. So I'm taking every opportunity I can to watch watch some space live images of the moon with the Orion spacecraft. And of course, we should also expect Starship to launch soon. But that has been on hold for a couple of months already. Okay, Sandro, graag gedaan. So I'm actually in the way of the moon. That is not good. Maybe I should reposition my head here, or maybe I should just put it out altogether. So we're interested in looking at the moon. So pretty cool still. But yeah, we are not there yet. I need to click on it to update the tracker. So 2,942 miles. So we're slowly getting closer. Now, pretty cool to watch. You see some of the big Maris on the moon. So I'm just trying to find out. Let's see, I think we are looking at Tycho definitely. Oh. I'm just trying to check something. What's this here? Let's see. So that's definite. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa! The moon is. Oh.
If you're just joining us this morning, we are 1 hour and 18 minutes away from today's outbound powered flyby burn. This burn will be 3 minutes and 27 seconds long and will propel Orion around the moon in anticipation of a splashdown off the coast of California on December 11th.
Okay, December 11th, the splashdown.
Leading the team here in Mission Control Houston during today's burn is NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling. But Judd is not the only flight director here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, that is working the Artemis mission. So let's take a look at a few of the other flight directors.
Flight CQ in place.
Ready, come for cooling status.
Monaco AOS, good port. Copy.
Flight controllers generally focus on systems, subsystems of the vehicle.
We already saw this, right?
They're more in tune with the detailed workings of their particular system that they're responsible for.
Yeah. Let's look at the tracker again. The tracker, it shows a very nice picture of the moon. Oh. Yeah, okay. They also have to wait. So yeah, guys, once again, this is the Orion spacecraft, the red line. We did a lunar flyby. That was during the first week after takeoff. Then it reached its farthest orbit away from Earth. And now we are here in the, I think, the third week already. And we are doing this second flyby. But yeah, as you can see, the Orion spacecraft is approaching the moon from inside its orbit around the Earth. So we're not seeing the Earth right now. We are seeing the surface of the moon, or we saw it until a couple of minutes ago. And yeah, I think it will be about 100 kilometers away from the surface. So I was hoping to get to see some nice lunar images, like here in the tracker. But so far, the images that NASA is able to show with their camera on the Orion spacecraft, they are a bit fuzzy. But they do have some super nice images of the moon and the Earth in the background during that first flyby. Vic is still in class. Okay. Well, let's switch back to that live stream.
Trips, and it just makes sense to test that and go into the moon where you're in a similar environment, but you're much closer, and in the event of an emergency type scenario, we can bring them safely back home.
Station, this is Houston.
We've had a lot of experience now in low Earth orbit, you know, over 50, 60 years of experience, and we've learned how to do that pretty well. We've learned what the effects of the body are in low Earth orbit, but there's still things that we need to practice, and we need to be able to understand how you sustain life further and further and further away from our planet.
It's just so different from everything you learn when you do low Earth orbit. And that's what's making it so much fun. I'm every bit as excited about this mission as I was the first day I walked in the doors of Mission Control.
Yep. I think they played
Orion
the same
continuing
video.
to close in on the moon, now 2,774 miles away, traveling at a velocity of 4,300 miles per hour.
Yeah, this is the tracker. This is the live image. So they repositioned the camera to look at the burn, I think.
The European space. You are looking at a view of the European service module, the very bottom of it there. And you are seeing the large engine there in the center of the European service module. That's the orbital maneuvering system engine, or OMS engine. That's the engine that will be utilized during today's return power flyby burn. This is the main engine on the European service module and is a repurposed space shuttle orbital maneuvering system engine that has flown in space 19 times before, all on space shuttle flights, beginning with STS-41G in October 1984 and ending with STS-112 in October 2002.
Oh, this is still...
We are now 1 hour and 13 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. That burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds, and will change the velocity of the Orion spacecraft by 960 feet per second.
Yeah, they are reducing speed. So now it's positioned away from the moon.
You're also getting a great view of the 8 auxiliary engines on Orion.
Oh. They lost the feed.
And again, Orion continues to close in on the moon, now only 2,680 miles away from the lunar surface. Following today's closest approach to the moon, Orion will be only 79.2 miles above the lunar surface.
Okay. Oh, no live picture, unfortunately. Ah, here we go again. It's getting better. Now I'm getting excited. That's pretty cool. This is a cool, nice live view. You see now that the moon is sharp. And that's because they are just approaching the moon, and the camera is actually... Oh, no, not again. They just refocused, but there's something happening. Oh, let's hope they get a sharp image now. So we are looking at that one. How is it called? Let's check. So this is Sinus Iridium. Let's check that out. You see that in the middle of the moon. That little half circle there. That Mar is called Sinus Iridium. Yeah, we have a sharp image now. Great, finally. Finally they refocused. Oh, that's pretty awesome. Let's see how close they can get. Hopefully they will not lose the video feed. Oh, I like this. That is cool. Hey Dave. Yeah, thanks for watching. You think you will have a moon base instead of an orbital space station in the future? Yeah, that's also what I'm actually questioning. Is it? Because we already had an international space station, and of course it's like they said in the video, they have a lot of experience with humans, long duration space flights, and the human body and that kind of stuff. So I thought the next step would be to build a base on the moon, actually. So I know they are going to land, they are going to try to land on the South Pole. And I was just thinking that the Orion spacecraft, or maybe also Starship, would fly up to the moon, would land there, And then we would have our first lunar base, a man like human moon base. But now they're also talking about that gateway, which apparently is a space station they want to build to move between the Earth and the Moon. And to, I don't know, they will maybe experience some new phenomena, like you go beyond the Van Allen belts, for instance, so you will encounter far more radiation as compared to being in close in orbit around the Earth, like the International Space Station. It was only about 350 kilometers up, I think. So there might be some benefits also to building a space station that goes from the Earth to the Moon. But I'm not completely sure. I just... Apparently that's the plan. NASA has a plan to build that lunar gateway. So let's see what happens in the future.
We're now 1 hour and 8 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. Everything continuing to move smoothly here in Mission Control Houston. As a reminder, we will lose signal when Orion crosses behind the moon. That's because the moon will be blocking the signal to the Deep Space Network.
Oh, look at Tycho Crater. Sometimes it's refocusing
that loss
all the time.
Of signal 1 hour and 5 minutes from now. That will be a 30-minute loss of signal.
Well, I will keep on watching at least for half an hour now.
During this loss of signal period is when Orion will complete the return-powered flyby burn, that 3-minute and 27-second burn that will send Orion on a trajectory to head back home ahead of a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean on December 11th.
Yeah, pretty cool views now. Let me try and find out Sinus Iridum. That's what we are looking at, that part of the moon. So you see that little half circle at the end. Oh, this is a Dutch website. It's the extension of Mare Imbrium. And we have like on the edge of that, can I point to that? I don't think so. So this area we're looking at is actually Sinus Iridium, so that's a lava lake, basically. A plain of basaltic lava. And then we have here, on the end, we have Sinus Iridum, if I pronounce that correctly. And beyond that, we have the Jura Mountains, which actually are a mountain range, the Jura in France.
And if you are just joining us this morning, we are bringing you live coverage of today's return-powered flyby burn here in Mission Control Houston. That burn is an hour and 6 minutes away from now and will be a 3-minute, 27-second burn that will slingshot Orion around the moon in a trajectory to head back to Earth and a splashdown on December 11th. But we have been getting some beautiful views of the moon. And I have a very special guest with me this morning. This is Juliana Gross. She's the Deputy Apollo Curator, and she's going to point out some of these amazing features that we have been seeing on the lunar surface in some of the shots.
That's what I was
thinking.
So why aren't they explaining what we are seeing?
You're very welcome. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, so speech back for the live view.
Yes, absolutely. So can you talk a little bit about some of the features that we are seeing on the lunar surface here?
I just had to find it out myself.
So if you look on the moon right now to the left middle area of the moon there, the bright spot that you see there, that's Copernicus crater. The dark region,
that's the one on the bottom right.
Sort of like right in front in the middle center of the moon right now, that's the Imbrium Basin. And so these are impact features that we have on the moon. So when the moon formed throughout its history, over its 4.5 billion years, has been bombarded by meteorites and asteroids. And for the Imbrium, that's the darker round area that you can see there, what happened is there's a massive crater, and so we call these a basin, and melt from the interior of the moon came up through cracks and then filled that basin crater. And you can imagine that as a big lava lake, and then it cooled to form basalt. The same thing happens at the moment on Earth. Hawaii is erupting, and that brings up basalt from the interior of Earth. So these basalt samples, when we analyze them and we look at these, we can learn something about the interior of the moon. I see that we lost our actual live view, but in this beautiful view that we can see here, you can really nicely see Copernicus right in the center. And that's brighter because it excavates crustal material, which is white or bright, compared to the mare, which are basalt, which is dark. Oh, there we are back. So Copernicus is now in the lower right corner.
It's almost gone.
That's a fairly young crater, and that's why it still appears fairly bright, because over time, when the sun interacts with lunar rocks, it darkens over time, so we call that space weathering. Yeah.
And so we are flying fairly close to some of the Apollo landing sites now. We're a little too high above. We're about 2,000 miles away from the moon still to make out any features. But can you talk about a little bit about what the Apollo program studied in those landing zones, and maybe touch on how Artemis is going to be different, because we're going to be landing in an entirely different spot, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Apollo wasn't so much about science. It was more about like, hey, we're actually going to the moon and we can do it, and like the technology to show that we can do it. Apollo 14 and 12 sort of landed near Copernicus, like south of where Copernicus crater is right now that I pointed out in that region. And so Apollo 14 landed there in 1971, right above the Marmara region, which is kind of like south of Copernicus, and it's right at the edge of that big Imbrium basin that I talked about. They brought back a lot of rocks. They were interested in the rocks that were excavated from Imbrium. So there's a lot of impact melt, as we call them, or breccias. And every time a rock gets exposed to like heat and pressure and started to remelt in like an impact event like that, it resets the internal clock. So when rocks form, they record the condition from which they formed, including the age, like the time when they formed. But every time there's an impact event and it gets remelted, that internal clock resets. Now we can take these rocks and then measure the ages of them. And so every time the clock got reset, we now have the age of that impact event. And so we want to know when Imbrium formed, because it's such a big event that happened on the moon, that we can put everything else in relative age to each other. So that why that mission was important. Apollo 12 landed in the Oceanus Procellarum region, which is sort of to the lower left and then going up. It's kind of like where that shaded, like where you kind of stop seeing the moon, you know, the boundary of the shade and the sunlight lit area. The little bright spot that comes up on the, lower left third of the moon, that is Aristarchus crater. So that's a super bright crater in that Procellarum region, which we're now seeing more and more of. So that's sort of the area where Apollo 12 landed. That landing was to sort of show that we can do a pinpoint landing. So they landed 200 meters away from the Surveyor 3 lander, and they actually brought a piece from Surveyor 3 back to Earth to like really show. And that then paved the way for future missions to like really like, hey, we can do a pinpoint landing. So we can go to like a more difficult terrain where we can land, where it's more ruggedy. And so that's where we went there. And so now you can see even more of the Procellarum region. Most of that is dark gray, as you can see, and so these are the basalts, and that mission brought back a lot of these basaltic materials. And then we can look at the ages, and it turns out that those basalts were very different, and they were younger than the Apollo 11 mission, than the rocks that they brought back, the basalts that they brought back. Now, Artemis is going to be super exciting because we're going to a very different region. So if you look at the surface here, and you can see that's mostly dark gray, so it's mostly basalts. You can see in the upper part of the moon that's still bright. That's what we call the highland crust. So that's the very old crust. So when the moon formed, there was a giant impact between two protoplanets. It collided, created a lot of heat, everything melted. The center part formed and became Earth. and then the debris cloud that surrounded it coalesced and then became the moon. So once upon a time, the moon was covered in a global magma ocean. So it was fully molten, right? And if you have a global magma ocean, you start crystallizing things. So now when you crystallize stuff that is denser than the melt, that sinks, right? And if you crystallize things that are less dense than the melt, that starts to float, like ice is floating on water, right? And so now we have these crystals crystallizing these minerals, and they are less dense, so they float to the surface and they build the crust. These crystals are called plagioclase. They're white. And so your crust that then forms on the moon is white. And that's why the moon looks so bright when you look at this image or in the night sky, because that's the old crust of, the oldest rocks we have, and they're white in color. And so that's why this is so bright. Now the near side, so the side that we see right now, we see these dark patches, which then are the younger basalts that came to the surface once you start impacting it, and you take stuff away, you made these big basins, and then the interior remelts, and that melt comes up to form to fill these craters. That's very special. So it turns out that this Procalarium region, where Imbrium sits in, where Apollo 12 landed, where Apollo 14 landed, all these rocks that were brought back, they have a weird component that we call creep. And it's spelled K-R-E-E-P, and it stands for potassium, rare earth elements, and phosphor. That entire Mars regions that you can see here also has iron in it, lots of iron and lots of titanium, but the rest of the moon doesn't really have that. And so geologically speaking, all the Apollo rocks are really, really cool because they're very special, right? So if I would give you 6 missions and you land them on Earth and you land them all in Yellowstone National Park, and you collect all your rocks, right? You get, geologically speaking, really interesting rocks, but they're not representative for the United States or the rest of the world, right? So same happens with Apollo. Really cool rocks, geologically speaking, very interesting, lots of basalts, right? They all have this weird creep component, so they're all creepy. But the rest of the moon is very different, so they're not representative. Now with Artemis, we're going to go to the South Polar region. So that region is more representative compared to Apollo. We don't really expect a lot of basalts there, so that's more like highland region. The South Polar region also has the largest impact basin that we have on the moon, and also the oldest. So if we can bring back rocks from there, we can hopefully date that really, really old impact region, and then get a better idea of when things happened on the moon and establish a timeline. Now we also know that the polar regions are really, really cold. And so ices or volatiles and gases on the moon, they freeze out in the polar region. So when we go there and collect rocks, we can also bring back these frozen samples and then learn something about where the water is coming from, whether it's moon or, there was lots of asteroids and comets that impacted the moon. And then so we can also learn about something about the water that was delivered to the Earth-Moon system, which most likely also ended up on Earth. And so we can learn something about our own history and how the moon formed and evolved over time better than we can with Apollo. We're missing a lot of rocks and processes with Apollo, and hopefully we can fill these gaps with Artemis.
You are a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for sharing all of that information. Now, as we continue to get closer and closer to the lunar surface, of course, these features are going to become more and more clear. Orion is now 2,000 miles away from the moon, but at closest approach today, it will be just about 80 miles above the lunar surface. So before you go for the day, it looks like we are starting to get some better views of that area that you were discussing before. Is there any other items or areas that have come into view since we've been chit-chatting that you think would be helpful to point out?
Yeah, so we see Kepler crater, which is sort of to the left and lower left of Copernicus, what I just pointed out. So it's this like grayish area with the little dot in the center. And then if you go from there further to the left, right at where the moon's shades are, so there's still a little lower left, that really bright area, that's Aristarchus crater. And that's a really young crater, and it's really bright because it brought up material from that crust that I saw, and that's this white rock. It turns out we have orbital reflectance data. So when we look at the light, the sunlight that gets reflected off the surface, we can make assumptions about the chemistry in that region. And it turns out that that region is, geologically speaking, really, really complicated. So it brought back up old crustal material, but we also see some basaltic material. And in the central peak, we see material that is silicic, so it's really, really high in silica, and that usually means there's some kind of evolved rock. And when we say evolved, on Earth, that usually means like granites and stuff like that. We don't really mean it that way here, but it has more silica content in it. When I say central peak, so what happens when you have a big impact into the crust rebounds and brings a central part comes up. If you think about it, throwing a rock into water, right, it makes a splash, and then the water rebounds and brings a kind of like a central thing up and then plops back down. So if you would freeze that water, it would stand up in the center. So that happens on the moon or on Earth as well, where like the crust rebounds. And so the central peak is the area that is the deepest material that got brought back to the surface. So that is of importance and special interest to scientists, because now we have another window into the interior of the moon to study these things. And it turns out, specifically for that little bright crater there, it's super complicated, and then we're still trying to figure out what we are seeing.
So it sounds like there's definitely much to be learned from the moon, especially through the Artemis program, and I'm sure you're looking forward to getting some of those samples back to be able to study in depth.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Juliana, for taking time out of your day to chat with us. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This is fantastic.
So that is incredible. We have some really nice views now. Finally a bit sharper than... I think it's because the Orion spacecraft is just so close to the moon right now that the moon just came in focus. So pretty cool to see. And still, I think the spacecraft is still like 1,500 miles from the moon's surface. So we should be getting an even better view of the Maris we can see here in the picture. So I'm pretty excited about that. That's cool. I think I took a picture of my... Let's see if I have one. Can't find it. Let's see if it's here. Nope.
We're now 50 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. This burn will slingshot Orion around the lunar surface and put it in a trajectory ahead of a splashdown on December 11th back on Earth.
Oh, I thought I had a picture, like a close-up picture of
this burn will be a 3-minute and 27-second long burn, and will be the longest burn of the mission utilizing the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. You are getting a view of the OMS engine on your screen. It's in the very top left, the largest engine on your screen.
So we're pretty close now. 1700 miles. Pretty cool this.
The next major milestone that we're tracking here in Mission Control Houston is the Go, No-Go poll. During this poll, NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling will go around the room and poll each of the flight console positions to ensure that all is looking good ahead of today's burn.
It's getting darker. They're nearing the dark side. That's close to 5 o'clock. So
Orion is now less than 2,000 miles away from the moon, 1,756 miles, moving at a velocity of 4,563 miles per hour. At this time, Orion is over 237,000 miles away from Earth.
Well, it's exactly in the same spot as the moon. Oh, this is great. I hope the burn will work out, because it's a European Space Agency module. It's something built by Europe, so we do have a great view of the moon now. Definitely a lot better than first when the live stream started. They only have this one camera, I guess, up on the solar panels. We can see some beautiful craters. You know, you can also image them from your backyard, but we have this we have a thick atmosphere we have to shoot through, so yeah, this is definitely sharper, I think, than my images. We can compare a bit. Yeah. So I'm really looking for that picture. Let's see if I can find it. Somehow I can't. Oh, maybe it's here. Nope. 678 MC. Nah, can't find it. So we have Durkan in the house. Hi, Durkan. 34. So we're looking at the Orion spacecraft approaching the moon. There's some pretty cool imaging going on. The video feed is perfect. Oh, and it just crashed. So maybe they're close to executing the burn to get the Orion spacecraft back on a trajectory towards Earth. And I would love to do some imaging myself, but we don't have any clear skies in the Netherlands at the moment. It's super foggy, it's hazy outside, a lot of clouds. So guys, if you do have the opportunity, we are approaching a full moon again on the 8th of December. So that's pretty nice to watch. And then there's something special going on, because on the 8th of December, the planet Mars, will be in exactly the same spot as the Earth. So it will actually go behind, not the Earth, but the moon. So Mars will be in the exact position in the night sky as the moon, and it will actually move behind the moon. So we have a Mars occultation, as it is called. on the 8th of December. So if you have the opportunity and if you have some clear skies on December 8th, just watch the moon slide in front of Mars. I think Mars is already has passed its closest point to Earth. So on the 1st of December, Mars was closest to Earth, and on the 8th of December, or December 8th, we will have Mars in opposition with a full moon and a Mars occultation. So that's pretty awesome. That's pretty amazing. So hopefully we can get a glimpse of that. Really hoping for some clear skies on like 3 days from now. But the weather forecast is not very good in Western Europe right now. Maybe I should. Oh, I will move my my webcam. Here we are again. We're back. This is beautiful. So they're trying to target Copernicus crater just for me. That's super nice of them.
And if you're just joining us, Orion is
That's
now
my favorite spot.
1,550 miles away from the moon. We are
It's also an Apollo
today's
landing site.
return-powered flyby burn to begin 43 minutes from now. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds.
That is pretty cool.
During the time period that the burn takes place, Orion will be in a loss of signal period because it will be directly behind the moon, and the moon will be blocking the signal with the deep space network. Today's loss of signal will last for 30 minutes. After we come back around to the other side of the moon, we anticipate regaining communications with the Orion spacecraft, and that's when the team here in Mission Control will be able to analyze the return-powered flyby burn and make sure everything went as expected. This burn is critical as we look ahead to a return and splashdown of the Orion spacecraft on December 11th. Today's burn will put us in a trajectory to enable that splashdown.
Yeah, they keep on mentioning 11:43. That doesn't make any sense for me, but I think it's about 43 minutes still until they are going to do that burn. So now we have the other side. Yep, they're repositioning the spacecraft. Or maybe just the camera. Because they will have this burn and then it will go beyond the moon, of course. So once again, this was the first lunar flyby, and this is the second lunar flyby we see here happening. So this is what we see right now. It's approaching the moon from our side, from the near side, and then
and on your screen right now you are seeing some movement here.
Oh, yeah.
This is taking place as the solar array wings get into the right configuration ahead of today's burn.
So you really see Copernicus crater. So that's about 100 kilometers in diameter.
Great view of the Orbital Maneuvering System engine, or OMS engine, coming into view on the European Service Module. That's that large engine on the very bottom of the European Service Module, and is the engine that will be used during today's 3-minute and 27-second burn. Again, this will be the longest burn done by the OMS engine so far. But the OMS engine can actually fire for up to 16 minutes if necessary.
Nice. So let's get a full view here.
You're also getting a view of the 8 auxiliary engines on Orion. These engines can fire for less than 1 minute, up to 45 minutes in length.
So we have
and these
Copernicus
engines
crater
are
again,
used more for trajectory corrections.
moving across the image.
Each engine provides about 100 pounds of thrust and can provide steering during burns by pulsing on and off.
Yeah, let's hope it goes according to plan. So we have the big lava lake again. So that's easily, like this whole lava lake, that's easily, I think, 1,000 kilometers, or maybe even 1,500 kilometers across. There we go. We're moving up. I think this Plato crater on the top. And we have here the mountain range on the bottom right. That's the Montes Apennines, the Apennine Mountains on the moon. And that's another Apollo landing spot, actually. Oh, we're getting beyond the moon. So a lot of people also ask all the time why you can't see any
proper orientation ahead of today's burn. We are tracking that burn 38 minutes from now.
38 minutes. I need to prepare some food.
And again, during that burn, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft.
The
loss of signal will be 36 minutes from now.
36 minutes. Oh, I can keep the stream running if you like. I need to do some stuff. But anyway, another question I get a lot is why don't we see any of the stars in this picture? And that's easily understandable, because when you're imaging the... that's it, I think. When you're imaging the moon,
You're looking at a view from our data-driven animation of the Orion spacecraft. As you can see, we're now 1,317 miles away from the moon. Orion moving at over 4,700 miles per hour. At this time, Orion is over 238,000 miles away from Earth.
So guys, what I wanted to say is, why don't we see any of the stars in this picture? That's because the moon is super bright, so the exposure time of the cameras is really short. So you need only a couple of milliseconds of exposure to look at the surface details of the moon, and you can actually see that it's now already overexposed. You see a wide image of the moon. And so when you want to take an image of the stars, like you see here in the CGI, in the tracker, that picture would, you need an exposure time of at least a couple of seconds to capture even the brightest stars in our galaxy, because they are not lit by the sun. They are individual stars, light years away from Earth. So that's why you don't see them when you look at a live video feed of a spacecraft approaching an object in within our solar system. So also on videos of Jupiter, videos of the moon, videos of Saturn, you don't see the stars in the background.
Everything continuing to move smoothly this morning as we anticipate the return powered flyby burn 36 minutes from now.
"36 minutes from now."
We are hearing that the Orion spacecraft is now in the proper attitude ahead of today's burn.
All right.
From this view, you can see that orbital maneuvering system engine on the left of your screen, that large engine on the European service module. That's the engine that will be utilized during today's burn. You also see two of the auxiliary engines, as well as two of the solar arrays. On the tip of the solar arrays, on the wings of the solar arrays, are the SAW, or solar array wing cameras. Those are the cameras which are capturing the imagery that you see right now on your screen.
So yeah, pretty cool. You can see even when they are overexposing the moon a little bit, you still only see the blackness in space. So that's just because the moon is lit by our very own sun. And in order to capture deep sky objects, you need a long exposure time. And another thing is then, of course, you need to be able to track the stars as our Earth rotates. Yeah, if you're in space, you don't need to do that. But actually, you need to track the position of the stars throughout the night. So that's also another difficulty. Anyway, we're close to that burn. Let's see how much more do they need to go. I think they will be very close to the surface, so I'm pretty curious on the images they are able to show us. But it is close to dinner time here, and it's my job to cook. Oh. Where's the tracker? Here's the tracker. 1,300 kilometers. Miles. $1,100 even. 1135. So we're getting pretty close. Oh, I lost the chat. I'm trying to make out what
Orion continuing to close in on the moon, now 1,100 miles above the surface of the moon. During today's closest approach, Orion will be just 80 miles above the surface of the moon.
This is going to be great. Let's see if we can actually see some mountain ranges or craters.
Here in just a couple of minutes, we do expect NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling to give a go, no-go poll for today's return-powered flyby burn. If the team polls go, then we are anticipating the burn to begin at 10:43 a.m. Central and last 3 minutes and 27 seconds. This burn will slingshot us around the moon and get Orion into a trajectory to return back to Earth and splash down off the coast of California. While Orion is behind the moon today, we will not have communication with the vehicle because the moon will be blocking the connection to the deep space network. However, once Orion swings back around on the other side of the moon and regains communications with the deep space network, we do anticipate to be able to communicate with the vehicle. Today's loss of signal is slated to last 30 minutes. And at this
see
time
Copernicus
period,
crater
we
here
are
on the
now
top
1
right.
hour away
It's
from
incredible. We're getting closer and closer to the surface.
We are now 29 minutes rather away from
I'm
the
getting
loss
excited
of signal
now.
and about an hour away from the acquisition of signal.
Acquisition. So when are they predicting the loss? So 30 minutes to go, I think, and we are now at 1,000 miles. So that is pretty cool, man. I think less than 1,000. Let's check the tracker. 1,052 it says. Okay, let's move back to the live feed. That's incredible. Oh, I think they stopped broadcasting the live feed. Hopefully they can get it back. Yeah, so this is the tracker. Dinos from Greece. Kalimera.
If you're just
can they
joining
get
us
a
this
picture
morning,
back?
we are
Would be
bringing
great.
you live coverage of today's return-powered flyby of the Orion
Oh,
spacecraft,
look at that, man.
which is now 20 days into its 25-and-a-half-day
Now
test
I'm getting
flight.
excited. Copernicus crater here. You can clearly make out the two
This Orion
like
spacecraft
peaks
is
inside the
uncrewed as
crater
part
now.
of Artemis 2. We
On the top right.
will have crew on board
So that
Artemis
crater is
2.
100 kilometers in diameter, or about 70 miles.
Today's return-powered flyby will begin at 10:43 a.m.
This is
Central
an awesome
and will
image.
last 3 minutes and 27 seconds. This burn will slingshot Orion around the backside of the moon and put it in a trajectory ahead of a splashdown off the coast of California just a few days from now on December 11th.
Yeah, this is really an awesome live feed. Oh, look at those mountain ranges. They coming closer. I guess it's tricky to
during Orion's mission, it broke the
broadcast
record
a signal
for
when you're close to the Earth,
distance
to the
traveled
moon.
away from Earth for a human-rated spacecraft meant to return
why
back
are they
to Earth.
talking about that all the time?
On November 28th, Orion broke that record, having traveled 268,563 miles away from our home planet.
Yeah. And Voyager 1 left the solar system. I don't
During
really
this time
understand why
period,
they
Orion
make
was
such
in the distant retrograde orbit.
Yep.
Orion remained in this distant retrograde orbit for about 6 days, in which we tested out the systems of the spacecraft in the deep space environment.
Under
Last week,
1,000
the
miles.
distant retrograde departure burn took place, which brought Orion back towards the moon, which we are now less than 1,000 miles away from. The DRD burn set us up for today's return-powered flyby burn.
9:29.
And this burn again sets us up.
It would be nice
for
to have a
splashdown
live
just
view
a few
now.
days from now.
You see how fast it's going? So 9:23, 9:22. Every second is a mile now, closer to the surface of the moon. So if they could get back that live view, then in about a minute or two, we should really see some awesome details that we cannot capture when using a backyard telescope like I do. Oh, please, not the CGI. Yes, they're able to get it back. Here we go.
And here is the view of the
Yeah,
moon.
great.
As mentioned, less than 1,000
Copernicus
miles
crater
away.
on the right.
Still a little ways
Mid-right
to go
on the
to get to our closest
side.
approach of the day, at which point Orion will be just 80 miles
You see
above the
these
lunar
little
surface.
small craters, they are so pinpoint sharp now, because the moon, of course, doesn't have any atmosphere. So you see these pinpoint sharp craters.
But we are getting closer
And
to
a nice
today's
reflection of the sun.
anticipated burn, now 27 minutes away from that burn, and just 24 minutes away from the anticipated loss of
look at
signal.
that. What is that? You see a little mountain range there. So guys, this is what makes me emotional. If you get these high quality pictures of the moon, you realize that it's another world, right? Oh, I think you see here a mountain range. I can check in the atlas how high they are. Let me see. So we have Copernicus still. Oh, it's almost in front of my webcam. So let me move here. So we have Copernicus crater on the bottom right now. So let's reposition. Where is that? Here, and then
Orion continuing to pick up speed as it closes in on the lunar surface. Now traveling at 4,852 miles per hour. And now just 846 miles away from the moon.
Yeah, cool.
We're continuing to get a shot of the Orion spacecraft, namely the European Service Module and the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine, on the left hand of your screen there, the largest engine shown. That's actually the largest engine on the Orion spacecraft. The OMS engine is a repurposed Space Shuttle Orbital Maneuvering System engine that has flown on 19 Space Shuttle flights. The first flight was STS-41G in October 1984, and the last was STS-112 in October 2002.
Well, it's Scrotch's Valley, you see on the left, just above the solar panel. It's called like a valley or rill on the surface of the near side of the moon. Let's see, can I get some details? It's a very interesting here. Blah, 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 blah. The largest rill on the moon. It begins at 6 kilometers diameter crater located 25 kilometers to the north of Herodotus. Okay. Oh, that sounds good. Too much information here. Oh, look at that world. We're getting close. Let's check out the tracker quickly. The tracker now shows 766 miles. That is so beautiful. 766 miles, and now you really see all the details. And they weren't able to show that in the first lunar flyby for some reason. They weren't able to focus the camera, but now they can. That's cool.
The return-powered flyby is now underway.
So you see also the sun hitting the moon, but not completely
here in Mission
like
Control,
it's
Houston,
hitting these craters on the side. So you have this shadow in the shadow in the craters. Oh, I'm happy to be able to watch this live. My God, this is super beautiful. Oh, I'm happy. This is why I waited. Everybody should see this. So the moon actually was created, of course, in a collision with Earth. So there was a Mars-sized planet hitting the Earth about 4 billion years ago, and that created the moon. And the moon is about 25% of the diameter of the Earth. So look at that crater. I really like those. So we have now not completely a full moon, but still a half moon. And you see the shadow. If you look at the crater on the right hand side in the middle, you see the shadow, and you see a sunlit piece of that crater. That's yeah, I like that. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful video live feed. Incredible.
And with the go from the team here in Mission Control Houston for the return-powered flyby burn, we're now just counting down the minutes until the start of that burn. Again, 22 minutes away from today's burn. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds. But just prior to the burn, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft. That loss of signal is anticipated in 19 minutes from now.
678 miles.
The reason we do lose communication with the spacecraft is because it will be flying directly behind the moon, and the moon is blocking the signal to the deep space network. However, once the spacecraft travels back to the other side of the moon, we do expect to regain communications with the vehicle at that time.
Okay. I'm waiting until that loss
Orion
of signal.
is now only 687 miles away from the moon. At closest approach today, Orion will be just 80 miles above the lunar surface.
Yeah, so this is awesome. So let's see if we can make out that crater here on the bottom of the screen. That is, to the best of my knowledge, let's see, is it this one? Pooh. It's to the left of Copernicus. I think we are here. So this is perhaps Herodotus crater. Herodotus. And oh my God, Aristarchus crater. So if you look that up, I think they're about maybe 50 kilometers in size, in diameter. Oh, you look at that on top, the big one.
Now just 20 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby. This burn will commit Orion to a trajectory to head back to planet Earth after its 20-day mission so far. By the time Orion splashes down in the Pacific Ocean, it will have been in space for 25.5 days.
So this is a view at 600 miles. Whoa, this is super cool. I'm trying to check all the crater names.
During
they are
its
about,
journey,
these little ones,
Orion
they are about
has
10 to
broken the
20
record
kilometers
for
in diameter,
longest
so 10
distance
miles
traveled by a
perhaps.
human-rated spacecraft meant to return back to Earth. On November 28th,
Here
Orion
we
was
go.
268,563 miles away from planet Earth. Right now, Orion is 239,364 miles away from Earth, but only 570 miles away from the Moon. At our closest approach today, Orion will be just 80 miles above the surface.
So hopefully we will get one last view before this blackout. Here we go. Wow. Look at that.
Our next set of events will take place in rapid succession. First, we will lose signal with the Orion spacecraft after as it travels behind the Moon. That loss of signal will be just 15 minutes from now. Then 3 minutes after we lose signal with Orion, the return powered flyby burn, or RPF, will take place. This burn will last 3 minutes and 27 seconds and will be completed with the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine, which you see there on your screen to the left on the European service module. It's the largest engine on Orion.
Oh, here we go.
And today's 3 minute and 27 second burn will be
the
longest burn that the OMS engine will have completed on the mission so far.
So 500 miles from the surface right now. Oh, here we go. Yeah, that is a beautiful shot. It's so cool. And it is, I think, this part, if I'm correct. So I think this is Valles Schroteri, it's called. You see these little rill here, the little mountain rill. Oh, it's going to reposition for the burn, I guess. Or maybe to get an aft view. So the solar panels are repositioning to catch as much sunlight as possible, I think.
And we're continuing to get some great views of the lunar surface as we fly just 500 miles overhead. This view coming from one of the solar array wings, or SAW cameras, as it gets into the proper position for today's burn.
Ah, okay. Yeah, this is a super nice high definition view of the Moon. Definitely better than in 1969 or in the 70s.
Coincidentally, 8 years ago to the day was the launch of the Exploration Flight Test 1, or EFT-1. This was the first test flight of the crew module portion of the Orion multi-purpose crew vehicle. This was an uncrewed test flight that orbited the Earth 2 times before splashing down. Now, 8 years later, Orion is about to fly behind the Moon.
Yeah, unfortunately the spacecraft is in front of the Moon. But we are at 431 miles away from the surface, so that is pretty close, huh? Hopefully they will be able to. No, yeah, we can see the Moon if you look like down the spacecraft. Top left of the bottom left. Oh, ships! I'm in front of it. Go away, webcam. So here it looks like they're landing. That's cool. They're not though. Wow! See those little craters there? They're not so little anymore. I think they're still about like a couple of a couple of kilometers or miles in size. Oh, that's so cool. Oh, it's unfortunate that the spacecraft is in front of the moon now. But they have to reposition the solar panels to, for the burn, I guess. Well, very interesting. It really looks like they are going to land. Maybe they didn't tell us. New plan. But the velocity is now almost 5,000 miles per hour. So that's not a perfect speed to land. Nope. We still can see some surface details. Ah, that's pretty cool. You have to look closely though. On the bottom left, there are some details. There are some features of the surface of the moon visible. Yeah, the camera is facing the wrong side. 365 miles. Tips for gaming, yeah. I'm also watching the tracker. The tracker says indeed 365. It's also going to the dark side, I think, of the moon. So you see it's...
We're now 13 minutes away from today's return-powered flyby burn. Orion is 365 miles above the lunar surface, traveling at a speed of 4,963 miles per hour.
Yeah,
just 10 minutes from now, we do anticipate losing signal with Orion as it begins its trip around the backside of the moon.
Okay. Now, we did have some really super cool views. You agree? Oh my god.
On the bottom of your screen in the left there, you can see the solar array as it begins to move into place. You're also looking at the Orion capsule itself there, taking up the majority of your screen. You can see the kind of silver coloring of the capsule. This is the portion that when we have a crew on board as part of Artemis 2 that they will be living and working in during their trip to the moon and beyond.
We still see some details on the top left.
Screen there, you can see the moon as Orion glides over it. Again, 335.
It's very unfortunate that we don't have.
But at the closest approach during today's return-powered flyby burn, Orion will be just 80 miles above the lunar surface.
306 miles now. It shows. Can this camera be pointed up a little bit?
We are hearing that the solar arrays are configured for today's burn.
Oh, this is the view we're getting. Oh, it's so detailed. You can see it on the top left, but it's so tiny. Better than nothing. Oh, can you see it? It's like 250 now, I think. We can see only a very small portion. It's cool. You can see it here. You can really see the surface now.
Orion is now moving to the proper burn attitude. We're now 10 minutes and 30 seconds away from the start of today's 3-minute and 27-second burn.
Okay. We should have put that camera on the other solar panel.
And we expect to lose signal with Orion in 8 minutes.
So 8 minutes to go. Hopefully we will get some. They're repositioning again, I think, a little bit. Orion, show us the moon. It's now 278 miles.
Today's outbound
from the surface.
Today's return-powered flyby burn sets us up on a trajectory to splash down off the coast of California.
Here we go again. Bottom left.
On December 11th.
Oh, they went to the dark side. Here, the burn is starting. It's positioning itself, the spacecraft.
And you were seeing some thruster firings there as Orion maneuvers to the proper attitude for today's burn.
Yeah, pretty cool this. Oh. Nope, there goes the moon. And the sun, apparently. I think this is actually sunset. So they are going beyond the... How do you say that? It's going to the dark side of the moon. So you see a sunset now.
Now less than 6 minutes, 30 seconds until we lose signal with Orion.
Yeah.
The burn will start in 8 minutes and 40 seconds.
So guys, I'm going to wait for that 6 minutes and then
Orion
I'm going
is currently
to
250
make some dinner.
miles above the lunar surface.
Star Trek in the 90s. Yeah. The final frontier. 5 minutes until signal loss. Yeah, you see that the spacecraft is also getting dark, so it's going behind the moon now. And the moon will block the sunlight. So it will be at the night side of the moon.
Today's 3 minute and 27 second burn will take place with the Orbital Maneuvering System, or OMS engine. That's the largest engine on the European Service Module. Today's burn will change the velocity of the spacecraft by 960 feet per second during its 3 minute 27 second burn.
So it's now 200 miles from the surface.
Closing in on 5 minutes away from our
But we're looking at the
anticipated
sunset.
signal with Orion.
So you see the sunset on one of the solar panels.
We will not have signal with Orion because the moon will be blocking out the
The
signal
light of the
to
sun.
the Deep Space Network. However, when we swing back around on the other side of the moon, we do anticipate to regain those communications.
Ah, so the closest point they will be getting to is not visible because the sun is now moving behind the moon. So it will be dark soon. In about 5 seconds, I think. Yeah, here we go.
And we are hearing that Orion is in the proper burn attitude. 6 minutes and 40 seconds away from the start of today's 3 minute 27 second burn. Just 4 minutes until today's loss of signal.
7 minutes before your next coffee. Yes. 200 miles. Yeah. So now we are not getting any more detailed images. I think this is what we
telemetry-driven animation. Orion
have.
is now 202 miles away from the lunar surface.
Ugh. Yeah, that's it.
Looking at a live view inside the White Flight Control Room here at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas. NASA Flight Director Judd Freeling is leading the team on console at this hour.